So going down this weekend, the UFC heads back to the Apex for UFC Fight Night Taira versus Park. We've had a little switcheroo going on with the main event. It was supposed to be Tatsuro Taira versus Amir Albazi, which I was really excited for that matchup. And then we had Park pulled from his bout, which was supposed to be next weekend against Steve Erceg, to now get pushed forward a week to take on Tatsuro Taira. So different styles of opponents for both guys. So it's going to be very interesting to see the adjustments that they make coming into this one. But this is a lackluster card, man. It's a lackluster card. We got a few fights that I'm looking forward to, but I think that this main event might be a little bit more interesting than what a lot of people are going to give it credit for. And this fight right here, I mean, this just has fireworks written all over it. Chris Duncan versus Mateusz Rebecki. Super excited for that one. And Estevam taking on Elves Brenner. Two guys that they're always in a fun fight. So a nice scrap right there. And then one of the ones that is just, I mean, we got Nora the Great Cornholio on here, so it's always a good time when she's on the card. And then this one right here that I don't know how the hell this fight's going to play out. I think that this is a super 50-50 type of fight. I still haven't made up my mind on it. So whenever we get there, I'll make a pick. But let's rock and roll, man. We got Kevin Vallejos on this card as well, a prospect that I'm super high on. So there's a few things that are interesting about this card, right? But first and foremost, we have Bashi. He was supposed to be on this card, I think, against Francis Marshall, and the fight fell off, and then they did get Bashi back on this card, and he is a Dana White Contender Series product, right? He's a guy that he's a very good wrestler. He's coming over with the collegiate wrestling background, and it's like, whoop, pump the brakes, right? Because just because you got that American-based style of wrestling doesn't mean that that's going to transition very well into mixed martial arts. However, we have seen Bashi throughout his MMA career. This kid's only 23 years of age, and he has shown that he is making improvements in his game, going out there, getting these submissions. Now, I mean, his opponents haven't been pretty good, right? I mean, this guy won too bad, 14-3, right? Got the finish there, right? Goes out there, finishes, gets a nice finish over Zach Riley, but really, it was when he came on the Contender Series and was able to submit Dorian Ramos, and then in his debut, I mean, in hindsight, this is the prospect killer, man. Christian Rodriguez, right? I mean, C-Rod, he's an issue for guys making their debuts or newcomers in the UFC. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's scrappy, hard to keep down. Bashi should win this fight all day long, right? He's got the wrestling. His striking is starting to improve, and when you have the threat of the takedown, that opens up the hands, because I think on the feet, I mean, Yannis, I couldn't find a lot of recent footage of this guy, but from going back a few years ago, I mean, he's got some pop in his hands, right? And you saw that in his most recent timeout. I mean, he got a pretty nasty KO. I did see that on YouTube, right? I mean, this guy, he's got KO power, right? And he does have a solid ground game as well, to where if you get taken, where you can take him down, you can submit him, but he does have a decent ground game of his own as well. But look, he's scrappy. He's got some power to where if he can keep the fight on the feet, sure, he could pull this off. I'm not going to count him out because I'm not super high on Bashi yet, considering, yeah, he's got this hype. But from what we've seen so far in the UFC, had that nice win on the Contender Series, but I didn't really like the debut. But again, I mean, C-Rod, he's beating a guy like Yannis, right? So I'm not going to rip on Bashi too much here, but I do think that this is a fight that he should absolutely win without question. He was in camp. He was prepared. I'm sure Yannis is a guy that is consistently training, kind of doing his thing, over in Fury, maybe, waiting for that big opportunity or that call from the UFC. So I don't know exactly what's been going on for him, but Bashi to me is just a better fighter at this point. I like his wrestling. I like the improvements that we're seeing from this guy, and I think that was a learning experience against C-Rod in there, because in hindsight, that is a very, very hard fight early in your career when you're dealing with a guy, the prospect killer, that is C-Rod. So I'll go Bashi by decision here. Next, we have Piera Rodriguez versus Ketlen Souza. Now, this one, what the hell am I going to do here, right? I'm not high on either one. I'm not impressed with either one, right? With Ketlen Souza, it was kind of a Mr. Steal, Mr. Steal Your Girl. This was Mr. Steal Your Moment, right? Where it was on UFC 306. I believe that this was the fight right here. She goes out there, pulls off this submission, and it was the Sphere. It was this crazy card. Our emotions are running, and we're like, woo, we got a contender in women's MMA. And then not so fast. She goes out there and loses a split decision against Angela Hill. But to be fair, right, Angela Hill, we've seen that she's still in great shape for her age. She's going out there. She's hanging with the young guns, right? She's doing a great job out there. Has the volume, has the experience, has the output. But, I mean, I don't know, man, right? I mean, because before that, she's winning a decision against man, right? She's getting submitted by Corinne Silva, who's a pretty decent prospect, right? I mean, what the hell am I going to do here? I can't count on Ketlen Souza. She's got power. She can keep it on the feet. I mean, she'll be throwing those big slingshots out there. Whoop. But I don't know. Right? Because Piera Rodriguez, it's kind of been whatever, right? She goes out there, wins against Knudsen, and I thought that this was a pretty impressive win because Josephine, she's pretty good, right? Goes out there, gets a win, but she loses here, right? But again, disqualification, then goes out there, gets subbed by Jillian Robertson, who we're seeing how good she is. So an asterisk there in terms of, really kind of judging it. Then she beats someone like a Sam Hughes. She beats someone like a Kay Hansen, but she's not super dangerous. Maybe with a good game plan, she comes in here, gets the takedowns, gets the fight to the floor, got decent striking. But look, Ketlen Souza's more powerful. She's got danger on the feet. She has some submissions in her back pocket. I mean, I don't trust either person in this fight. I think that this is just kind of a fight that's existing on this card. But just give me Ketlen Souza, man. I don't know. I'll pick her by decision. I'll say she lands the more damaging shots. And if she does get taken down by Piera, I don't exactly like the threat that Piera has been providing recently, whereas I think Ketlen Souza, she does have finishing ability, which I think is something to factor into this fight. And the power on Souza's side is definitely noticeable, but you just can't trust either one of these women, in my opinion. So I'm just flipping a coin here. I'm going Souza because of the danger factor. Next, we got Felipe Bunes versus Rafael Estevam. I'm going Rafael Estevam here, and I'm going to say he wins a decision. Listen, I meant to start with my pick in the beginning, man. I tried to work on that coming in this video, and I forgot already. But look, here's the bottom line. This is a very interesting fight to the degree of Felipe Bunes is not exactly, he's not a world beater, but he does have very, very good submissions, right? Training over with the Pitbull brothers. We know that they got a solid camp over there, and he's coming off of a nice armbar victory over Jose Johnson, and that was a guy that I don't even know how Johnson was making the flyweight division, right? People talk about weight bullies and all this, and now people should be calling out Johnson for that, right? He was massive for the flyweight division. But that was a favorable matchup in terms of the ground game, right? Bunes had an advantage there, right? Before that, he gets finished by Joshua Van, but we're seeing how good Van is. He's about to be fighting Pantoja for the title, and I like what we've seen from this guy. Got good ground and pound, solid on the feet, really good submission game where he could pull off some slick stuff. So we can't just rule Felipe Bunes out of this fight, right? I see he's a big underdog coming into this, and a lot of that has to do with what we've seen from Estevam so far, right? Going out there, getting the decision win over Aguilar, beating a guy like Charles Johnson, who I've said time and time again, just might be the most underrated flyweight in the UFC right now. And then that nasty ground and pound finish on the Contender Series. I mean, this guy's good, man. He can shoot a million takedowns, pressure you. He could take you down. He could control you. He'll take your back. I mean, he is constantly just giving you something to think about when it comes to the grappling. And I feel like his striking is improving a little bit, right? It's not super clean, not super crisp. A lot of it is just to kind of occupy you. Still don't know if I said the word right. Enough to distract you. How about that? To get in on your hips, get to the takedowns, take you down, and he's just relentless, right? So there is the chance that Bunes could go out there and, be on his back, pull off some sort of submission here, but I don't know. I like what I've seen from Rafael. I think his control, his fight IQ when it comes to the grappling is clearly high level, and I think that his style is very troubling for a lot of guys actually in this division, so at least towards the back end right now. So I expect to see Estevam in the rankings very soon, but I am going to say that he wins this fight by a decision. I think that this is going to be a little bit closer than what people might be expecting, but still give me Estevam by a decision. Next, we have Rodolfo Viera versus Tresean Gore. Now, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, who am I going with in this fight? I would have been like, Rodolfo Viera, right? I mean, he's got super credentialed grappling, excellent, BJJ skills, and not only does he have good jiu-jitsu skills, but he's came into MMA, and I feel like he's done a good job of molding his MMA game, right? It's not just like he's some guy in there scooting around on his ass across the mat and, just trying to pull guard the whole time. That's not what he's doing. Like what Kron Gracie disgracefully was doing, like we were in a time capsule back in the when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth when the UFC started, right? Wasn't that long ago. I'm exaggerating, but the point, Rodolfo Viera is not just a jiu-jitsu guy at this point. I feel like he's really kind of molded his MMA grappling together pretty well, and I feel like his striking is actually coming along nicely, right? I think he's got a solid jab, right? He's a big, strong guy in the weight class, and he had a close fight with Andrey Petroski. He was like, whoa, Andrey Petroski. Close fight with Andrey Petroski? Petroski's not that good. Well, actually, Andrey Petroski stylistically is kind of an interesting fight for Viera because he has good wrestling. He's got decent calf kicks, and he's a decent striker on the feet, right? And we see the grappling kind of cancel out. So I don't really factor that too much into this fight. I got the submission over Armen Petrosyan, finished Cody Brundage, did lose to a guy like Chris Curtis, but what did we see in that fight? We saw durability, we saw grit, we saw MMA toughness, not just banking on your jiu-jitsu skills, and he did submit Dustin Stoltzfus. And I think that this is a there's a live opportunity for Gore to win this fight, because I do believe that while Viera has made some good improvements in terms of his overall game, I don't know if he's a better striker than Tresean Gore. I mean, Tresean coming off a tough, this guy kicks like a horse, man. He's got some nasty leg kicks. He's got some power in his hands, right? And he is coming off of that ass whooping that he took to Marco Tulio, but we're seeing how good Tulio is, right? And I said that was a disaster for Gore coming in, right? A more technical, powerful, dangerous striker. But, Viera's not super dangerous, right, in terms of the striking, right? He's decent enough, but, and we've seen Tresean Gore. He's got a super nasty guillotine, especially if you shoot and you got your head on that outside hip. He'll snatch that thing up and he gets cranking right away, and that could be a problem. But I would like to think that a guy like Rodolfo is not going to get caught in something like that. You never know. Right, but I feel like that's what Gore is kind of leaning in, right? And back-to-back guillotines, got the one over Josh Friend, but if you go back and you watch the Brundage fight, getting finished by Cody Brundage is just, it's inexcusable at this point, right? And he lost to Brian Battle, but again, we're seeing how good Brian Battle is. I'm going to go Rodolfo Viera by a submission here. I really believe that he can win this fight by submission. Listen, I know Tresean Gore, he hasn't been submitted in his career at all as an amateur and as a pro. And I really like Tresean Gore. I think he's super fun. And I think that there is the chance that he could go out there and get to the striking, put a beating on Rodolfo Viera. But given what we've seen from Rodolfo in terms of improving his game, I feel like he puts the jab in his face, pushes the pace here. Gore starts to slow down a little bit. And I feel like if you can make him hesitant with the grappling, just touch him on the feet with a jab, an occasional straight right hand, mix things together, I feel like eventually Viera will get him down. And if Gore tries to pull guillotine or jump guillotine, sometimes now, you might have it in, but as long as Viera can defend well, now Gore, if he jumps it, he ends up on bottom, Viera on top. That'll just be a disaster. So too much confidence in guillotine finishes can sometimes make you pay or make you, you can fall into a little bit of a trap. Give me Rodolfo Viera by submission. I know Gore's never been submitted, but we've seen that Viera clearly has some good submission skills, obviously with his jiu-jitsu background, but in the MMA world, he's been doing a pretty good job leveling up his game, man. I like Rodolfo Viera. Next, we have Rinya Nakamura versus Nathan Fletcher. I've went back and forth here because I actually think that this is more competitive than maybe what the odds are going to say in this fight, and I feel like Nathan Fletcher could absolutely win this. He's got a good jiu-jitsu game, and he was robbed in his last fight here. I scored this fight for him. I think I scored it, 29-28. I thought he beat Loughran, right? And we're seeing Loughran's not even in the UFC anymore. That, short Marvin Vettori looking dude with the giant ass head. And look, he's pretty game. Loughran, nothing special, but come on here, right? Nathan Fletcher, before that, submits Ramaska, right, from tough, and Ramaska had a hole in the grappling. He was good on the feet, right? And then he's coming over from Cage Warriors, and I'm cautious of these Cage Warriors guys now, right? I was high on Jordan Vucenic. I was high on Ian Gary, right? Gary's, making me look good, right? Or making us believers look good there. But outside of that, a lot of these guys, they're just kind of, yeah, and I know he's got a jiu-jitsu game, but if you look at what Nakamura has been doing, I know that he's coming over from Road to the UFC, so it's like, whoa, it's kind of like the Cage Warriors deal, right? We gotta hold on, man. We gotta see we gotta see something first. Comes over, gets a KO, right? Wins against Fernie Garcia, beats Carlos Vera by decision, and he is coming off of a loss to Gafarov, to where I'm like, okay, look, Gafarov's super experienced. He's gritty. He's a much better striker. And it was clearly, Nakamura was clearly outmatched there. But Nakamura is super explosive, right? And he's got really good wrestling. And it's transitioned decently into MMA. And I think that he is way more explosive, way more athletic. And I just feel like Nathan Fletcher, as good as he is with his submissions, I just feel like the wrestling of Nakamura is going to negate that, man. Like, I really do think that Nathan Fletcher is live here as an underdog, and maybe I switch my pick later in the week, but I really played with the idea of picking Fletcher because no way should Rinya Nakamura be a massive favorite. I don't know what the hell this guy has done to become some huge favorite here, but you know, if these odds are still accurate on here. But the point is, I'd imagine he's a favorite. Nathan Fletcher, he has more finishing potential in terms of the jiu-jitsu game. Nakamura is more powerful on the feet. Yeah, he's coming off of a loss to Gafurov, but I believe Gafurov beats Nathan Fletcher, right? So I take it with a grain of salt. I think the wrestling can kind of cancel out the jiu-jitsu game, and if Fletcher just wants to play from the bottom, he's going to be losing minutes on the judges' scorecard. So give me Rinya Nakamura, at least right now, by decision. I think he gets it done. Next, we have Nick Klein versus Andrey Pulyaev. I'm going to go Andrey Pulyaev, but I'm going to say that he gets a decision win here, right? And I think that this is an interesting fight, actually, because both of these guys get a win on the Contender Series, right? Goes out there, beats Liam Anderson by decision, right? And then we get Nick Klein goes out there, gets a submission on the Contender Series. UFC debut, UFC Seattle. He's in there against Mansour Abdul Malik, a super hyped up prospect in the middleweight division. And we had that moment where Nick Klein threw that like spinning back fist, spinning elbow, whatever it was, and he hurt Mansour really bad. So I know that had everyone in shambles because a lot of people were picking Mansour to win that fight. It felt like we were all counting out Nick Klein. But the reality is Nick Klein is really tough, man. He's a tough guy. He's got really good jiu-jitsu skills. He's physically strong, 6'1", 77-inch reach, which normally that's not bad in this division, but it's the fact that Pulyev's kind of a freak, man. 6'4", 78.5-inch reach, and what we've seen from him is if he can keep you at range, this guy's got some pretty good striking, right? And yes, he made his debut coming off of the Contender Series, and he got Christian Leroy Duncan. I mean, CLD, I feel like he's one of the better prospects that doesn't get talked about enough in the UFC right now. Super slick on the feet, well-rounded skill set, and I really am high on a guy like CLD. So, I take a little bit of a grain of salt here for both of these guys, but I don't like how Nick Klein got finished. I know that Mansour is an absolute monster, but I just like what I've seen from Pulyaev. If you go back and you watch the tape, he's long, he's rangy, and he does have competent ground skills. He has a couple submissions on his record as well. So I don't know that Nick Klein is just going to be able to take him down, ragdoll him around, and just have his way with him. I just don't see that happening, right? And the School of Martial Arts with Alexander, I think Pulyaev wins this fight. I think it could be close, right? It's a near even, but I like Andrey in this fight. I like the range. I think he's a much better striker, and I don't think that his grappling's that much farther behind than Nick Klein. But, of course, Klein could go out there, take him down, find a submission, but I like Pulyaev to stick and move and defend the takedowns and get this one done on the feet. Next, we have Danny Silva versus Kevin Vallejos. Now, if you've been watching the channel, which, by the way, if you're enjoying this video, if you could please subscribe, like this, let me know what you guys think below. I would appreciate it. Look, man, Kevin Vallejos, I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. This guy, I'm expecting to be in a title fight at some point in his UFC career within a year or two. Like, I don't know about a year or two, but a couple years at least, right? We'll say that. This guy's only loss in his entire career was on Dana White's Contender Series to Jean Silva, who's about to be fighting Diego Lopez, who I think is going to knock out Diego Lopez. That's probably going to get a title shot after that. So to go in there, have some back and forth with Jean Silva. Again, we're seeing how that loss is aged. And this dude, man, he's got a big blockhead, devastating power, right? Gets the KO over Cam Teague on the Contender Series, comes back and gets a win. And I always say this, guys. When you lose on the Contender Series and the UFC brings you back and you get a win on the Contender Series, sometimes to me that might mean more than just going out there and getting a victory in your debut on the Contender Series, because that shows you where a guy is at, man. They really want this, the mental fortitude that it takes to come back and get that done. And then in his debut, goes out there and KOs Choi. But again, Choi, he's not the most durable guy in the world. But the bottom line is Kevin Vallejos, he is not only one of the better boxers in the featherweight division right now, but this guy, to me, I was watching him fight live, and I'm like, this reminds me of Ilia Topuria, dude. The high guard, the head movement, the technicalities with the boxing. Now, he's not Ilia Topuria, but I do see a lot of similarities. The head movement, the defense. He has a very strong understanding for the fundamentals of boxing. Rips to the body well, brings the shots upstairs, and he's got some thunder in his hands. Legit power in his hands. I like the way he mixes up his levels with the combinations, and he has a competent ground game. So I don't think that, he's 5'7" with a 68-inch reach. Like, he's not the easiest guy to get in on, right? And he's got a fun opponent across from him in Danny Silva, right? The only loss in Danny Silva's career, he lost by decision. But since then, I mean, over in LFA, getting some finishes, wins against Angel Pacheco on the Contender Series, goes out there, split decision with Josh Kulabau, right? I feel like Kevin Vallejos knocks his block off, right? And then he goes out there and split decision against Lucas Almeida. I mean, these are all guys that Kevin Vallejos is starching, right? And the bottom line is Danny Silva's game, he's fun, and I think he's going to go in there and give it his all, but it's just not going to be enough, man. Kevin Vallejos, this guy is a dangerous prospect, man. I think that he's going to find a finish. Maybe he gets that knockout in the first round, but I've seen what Silva brings to the table. He's game, he'll stick and move, kind of move around, and I think he's going to be very cautious of the boxing of Kevin, but it's a matter of time until Vallejos gets the timing, and then it's going to be a disaster for Silva. Kevin is going to win this fight by knockout. Super high on this guy, one of the better prospects in the UFC right now. Like I said, drawing comparisons to a guy like Ilia Topuria. Next, we have Neil Magny versus Zaleski Dos Santos. Listen, I don't know who to pick in this fight, man. I'm just being honest. This is one that's not like, oh, let's get into the weeds here, the X's and O's, and that's not one of these fights. This is just one of the ones where it's like, I don't know. Something's going to happen and someone's going to win, right? If you pick this one right, you're not some damn expert, man. You just got lucky. All right, that's the way I'm looking at this fight because, look, Neil Magny, he's been written off for the past several fights, right? And that's for good reason because the UFC said, fuck you, Neil Magny. You're going in there against literally every dangerous striker that we can find in this division. You're going to fight them. And we're going to see where these guys are at. We're going to give you Carlos Prates. But before that, we weren't being mean enough. So we're going to give you Michael Morales, right? The super dangerous guy in the weight class. Big, strong guy like Michael Morales who just dusted Gilbert Burns. We know how good of a striker Prates is. But then he goes out there and upsets Mike Malott, pulls off one of the great upsets that we saw that year in Canada, where Mike Malott, to be fair, was tagging Neil Magny, was attacking his legs, beating up on him, and then he gassed out and Neil Magny comes back and gets the victory. Gets just absolutely destroyed by Ian Gary, right? And again, Ian Gary, one of the better strikers in the weight class. He just beat Carlos Prates, and then he got a split decision victory over Phil Rowe, right? We know Neil Magny, he's had some wins, he's had some losses, and he's got some records. I forget what they are in the welterweight division, right? Because it's kind of all got so murked up by how much of a disaster it's been. But this is a very winnable fight for him. It's a very winnable fight for him. And the fact that he's an underdog is interesting to me because Zaleski Dos Santos, he's coming off of a KO loss to a super dangerous Muay Thai striker in Chidi Njokuani who, look, he ran into a tough stylistic matchup against Jake Matthews. That's why I picked Jake to win that fight. But the bottom line is, Chidi's super dangerous if you're going to strike with him. And then, Zaleski goes out there, gets the finish over Zach Scroggin, but, who the hell is that, right? Then he goes out there, loses to Randy Brown, tall, rangy guys. So two things in common. Long, rangy strikers give Zaleski problems. But what do those guys have? They actually have power. They don't have pillow hands, right? And that's the reality with Neil Magny. And yeah, Neil Magny went out there and not Neil Magny. Zaleski went out there, got the win over Abubakar, but look, Zaleski's more dangerous. He's the guy that could go out there, land the big shots. Maybe he KOs Neil Magny, but Zaleski is not, Carlos Prates or, a guy like Michael Morales. And I know Zaleski's had moments right in the Benoit Saint-Denis fight where he, kind of shocked a lot of people. Then he goes out there and does what he does to Sean Strickland back in the day. So he's had some good moments in his career. He does have the power. I think he can win the moments in terms of the power, but my question is, what's he going to do with Neil Magny in terms of, Neil's going to pressure him. Neil's long, he's rangy, and I know he doesn't use his reach the best, but I feel like if Magny can put his foot on the gas, stay defensively responsible, I think he can move forward in the range and push him up against the fence, work his clinch game, take him down, implement that kind of game, but I don't think Zaleski's ever been submitted in the UFC, right? So to say that Magny's going to be the guy to do it, I don't think so. And even though Zaleski is 38 years of age, he still hits hard. He's still game on the feet. But, if you're asking me if he's one of these guys that Magny has been facing, it's not even close. It's not even close. And I know that none of those fights with Magny, they haven't been close. Right, so let's not give Magny some sort of participation trophy here because he's fighting these guys that are young and super dangerous, right? Because those fights are still not been competitive at all. But I don't know that Zaleski starches them. And if he doesn't starch them, Well, I don't think that that's just him rocking him around, beating him up for 15 minutes. I'm going to take a shot on the underdog here, Neil Magny. I feel like something good has to happen for this guy at some point. Again, as we get closer to the fight, maybe I switch this pick, but the danger is on the side of Zaleski. He's got the power to steal those moments that could, Magny could be controlling him for 4 minutes, and then we have this 1 minute where Zaleski rocks him, and that ends up winning him 2 rounds to get him a 29-28 decision. But I don't know, something about Magny being the underdog here, like he's been in there with super high-level competition to where, Zaleski's been fighting some good guys, but not as good as what Magny is in. And again, let's not give Magny a participation trophy because he's been getting dusted in these fights, right? And so if Zaleski was in there, he's probably getting KO'd, but he might land some shots on those dudes, right? But I feel like the savviness and the craftiness that Magny will provide, I feel like he'll bully him into the clinch, hold him up against the fence, kind of work his knees, work that range, right? Kind of fight this smart kind of game to where maybe he could take him down. But I don't know, man. I feel like Zaleski is super capable of winning this fight. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. I'm just going to flip a coin and go Neil Magny here by decision. I feel like this is a coin flip, man. I really do. Can't trust either guy here. Okay, we have Karol Rosa versus Nora the Great Cornholio. Nora the Great Cornholio, man. That's the nickname I gave her. Look, I like Nora, okay? TP from me bunghole. I like Nora. All right, I think she's game on the feet. She's fun, right? And the only loss that we've seen recently in the UFC has been against Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who I have, picked Jacqueline, I think, in every fight since she's been in the UFC. She's rangy, floats around on the outside, super clean technical striker from range, and she gives a lot of fighters problems right now, right? So if that's your only loss that we've seen here recently, I mean, I like what we've seen from Nora and getting the win over Jocelyn Edwards, which I thought was incredibly impressive because Jocelyn Edwards is pretty game, going out there and finishing Melissa Mullins, coming off of a nice finish win over Haley Cowan. We're seeing a nice evolution in the game of Nora, and I don't like what we've seen from Rosa, right? Sure, she's got a decent ground game. Maybe you could give her the edge, but I don't know. We've seen some nice improvements from the Great Cornholio, right? And with Karol, it's like, okay, so she lost to Norma. We know Norma's good. Beats Yannis Santos by split decision. That's a win that's aged well, but again, split decision. Loses to Irene Aldana, got beat up, then goes out there, beats Panna Kianzad. That was a good win, right? I thought Panna Kianzad's a pretty good boxer, right? And goes out there, loses to Eileen Perez, who's got a good ground game. Look, I think that this fight plays out on the feet ultimately, and I'm going to Great Cornholio here by decision, right? Maybe Karol can land some shots, mix in the grappling, change things up a little bit. Give me Nora the Great Cornholio to win by decision. I like the improvement she's making. She's fast on the feet. She's got some power. She's got a better striking arsenal here. Give me the Great Cornholio. TP from me bunghole to get this one done, man. We got Estevam Ribovic versus Elves Brenner. This is a super fun fight. And I don't know if we get to the judges' scorecards because it's going to be so crazy. But at the same time of saying that, we saw Estevam his last time out, got the split decision, lost by split decision, and Nasrat Haqparast, and a lot of people, feel different ways about this fight, right? And then he goes out there and, beats Daniel Zellhuber by split decision, which, if you're going off of Zellhuber's last performance, he got destroyed by Michael Johnson, right? So, I don't know. I don't want to go off a recency bias, but I don't like that. Right, and then before that, he got a nice finish over Terrence McKinney, which that really got the hype going, right? And before that, got the win over Kirk. But we've seen this guy lose, man. We've seen this guy lose, right? And twice in his career, right? Over his past 5 fights, we've seen 2 losses in there, right? And I know that Esteban's super dangerous. He's got good power, and he doesn't have particularly good defense, right? And a guy like Nasrat, who moves around on the outside, utilizes good footwork, can frustrate a guy like Esteban, right? We've seen from Brenner is this, right? He got finished by Joe Alvarez. I think Alvarez is moving up to welterweight, gigantic for the lightweight division, super dangerous, right? And then he loses to Maidatek Orlabai. I mean, how good is Orlabai, right? Super good game guy in this weight class. He's someone that's going to be in the rankings sooner rather than later, right? Okay, gets a finish win, right? What we've seen from this guy, got the victory, the finish over Guram Kutateladze, which I thought that was going to age incredibly well, and it turns out that Guram's been kind of a bust, right? And he finds himself out of a bust, right? Found himself outside of the UFC. Elves Brenner, to me, he's got more finishing potential here. I like his ground game. I like his submission game, right? Training over at Shoot the Box. He's aggressive. He gets in your face, but I feel like that might be the problem. I feel like if Brenner fights smart, mixes in the grappling, and kind of fights this super strategic game plan, I feel like he wins. But that's just not his style. That's not his style. His style is to get in your face, try to kind of just turn it into a barn burner, and that's where Estevam thrives, right? If you get in his face, this guy will knock you out. We saw him do it to McKinney. Daniel Zellhuber, while he lost to Michael Johnson, Johnson's super good at this point in his career. Super fast hands, right? Brenner kind of loads up on his shots, moves forward into range. He's live, right? You can never count out Elves Brenner. I don't think. He's got good submissions, and I feel he's got more finishing potential here. But I'm going to go Estevam Ribovic in a crazy back-and-forth fight by decision. I feel like this comes down to two guys are reckless defensively. The striking, I would give the edge to Estevam, and I don't think that Brenner is going to have a ton of success with the grappling here. Maybe he does, right? And if Estevam, is able to hurt him and follow him to the floor, we know Brenner's got a good guard, right? That's how those shoot-to-box are, and they're good off their back throwing those elbows, but I don't know. I feel like Estevam at this point is really starting to hit his stride, but I do think that Brenner cannot be overlooked in this fight. I like his finishing ability, so I wouldn't be shocked if he wins this one, but I just feel like Estevam is a touch better at this point in time. Give me Ribovic. He's got the cleaner striking. Co-main event, we have Chris Duncan versus Mateusz Rebecki. I mean, this, first of all, what a disgrace that this is in the Apex. This should be in front of a live crowd, a live audience, because this is a fight of the night type of candidate right here. Now, this is an interesting fight. This is a lot more interesting than what I would have given it, maybe a year ago, because of the fact that Chris Duncan has been one of these guys where he's 13-2 in his career, training over at ATT, great training partners, Gamrot, Poirier. He's got a great camp over there. And they do a great job of game planning, right? With Mike Brown and those guys. And they'll have Chris Duncan prepared. And what they've done a nice job of is, outside of this loss to Manuel Torres, who's a super dangerous prospect in this division, he has rattled off a 2-fight win streak here. One where he got the submission over Balagiocki, super dangerous, powerful guy on the feet. Then he goes out there and submits I thought he was a pretty good prospect in Jordan Vucenic, who's now out of the UFC, by the way. Both of them by guillotines, right? And as I said earlier in this about Tresean Gore, it's almost like a good thing and a bad thing. It's like, woohoo, I pulled off a couple guillotines, but it's not like Walter Walker out here who's, hit 3 heel hooks in a row. That's a different kind of position. Whenever you jump guillotine, right, and you pull guard, whatever, you jump gilly, you find yourself on bottom. You find yourself, if you can't finish the guillotine, in a really bad position. And I fear for Duncan in this fight, while he's game on the feet, he's durable. We've seen him get finished by Slava, I believe it was, a little while ago. He gets tuned up on the feet. He's not a particularly good striker, relies on durability and toughness, and I feel like that jumping gilly, it just might be a problem for him in this fight, because if you do that and you have Rebecki on top of you, I mean, this guy, he'll murk you on bottom. Dude, Rebecki on top of you in a top position, that's an absolute nightmare waiting to happen, right? And that's what we've seen from this guy. Super powerful. He's got nasty power in that left hand. He's super explosive. Got the submission victory over Roosevelt Roberts, and this fight right here, I was disappointed because I thought he was going to win this, but this was a great learning opportunity for Rebecki, because Diego Ferreira, I mean, we're seeing how good he is in terms of he's got that kind of anti-wrestling jiu-jitsu style to where he defends takedowns decently well. I know it didn't look great against, a guy like Grant Dawson, but we know Grant Dawson's a good grappler, right? Diego Ferreira, good submissions, power on the feet, underrated, right? A veteran that's been around for a while. Great learning experience. Goes out there, beats Maidatek Orlabai in one of the craziest fights we've ever seen. And we know how good Orlabai is. And Orlabai, he is beating Chris Duncan. Rebecki, I think that he puts a beating on Chris Duncan and wins this fight. And this is going to be a 3-rounder to where I do think that Rebecki is live to get the KO here because of the fact that Duncan is super hittable, right? He's kind of a moving heavy bag on the feet, but he is durable. He's tough. We've seen him get battered around and come back and win these fights and pull them off. And if Rebecki gasses out, that could be a problem. So I think he's going to be a little bit more patient, land those big shots. He has a good ground game, and he's 5'7" with a 66-inch reach. He's like this ball of muscle to where I just don't know that it's that easy to jump gilly and get Rebecki out of there with that, right? And I feel like if that's kind of what you're banking on here, getting beat up and pulling off a sub, I don't like that against Mateusz Rebecki, and I don't like Chris Duncan on the feet either. He's way too hittable. I just see too many holes in his game. While, it's impressive that he's won these past 2 fights by submission, I think he's going to get beat up here in this fight against Mateusz Rebecki, one of the more dangerous prospects on the rise in a stacked lightweight division. I like Mateusz to get this one done. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a KO, but I'm going to say by decision here because Duncan is incredibly durable. Next, Last but not least, we have the main event between Tatsuro Taira and Hyun Sung Park. And if you're enjoying this video, do me a favor, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Road to 10K, man. This is an interesting one because I think that in a couple years from now, maybe we see this fight again. And I think that Hyun Sung Park is a super fun prospect in the flyweight division, right? He's got excellent boxing, very good timing, rips to the body well, and I feel like his ground game is underrated. I feel like maybe I'm missing something, but a lot of people aren't mentioning the ground game. I like his submission skills. I like the way he's able to get to the back, right? I like a lot of things about Hyun Sung Park, but, you were preparing for a guy in Steve Erceg who has pretty decent straight boxing combinations, right? Solid grappling. But we've seen Steve Erceg have some hiccups, right? Now, granted, those are against some of the best guys in the world. Pantoja, Kai Kara France, right? Against Brandon Moreno, which I don't know why they kept giving Erceg, all those bangers and all those big names after he kept losing. But the bottom line is Hyun Sung Park is good boxing. He's got a good ground game. This is going to be a 25-minute fight. And, I think Park is good. And at some point, I think he's going to be at the top of the division, right? He's coming off of a super impressive submission victory over Carlos Hernandez 2 months ago. I like the activity. Goes out there, KOs Shannon Ross. But like I said, everyone's KOing Shannon Ross. You could KO him with a jab at this point, right? Goes out there, finishes Choi. This fight right here, if you go back and watch this one on YouTube, Road to the UFC here against Kilram, I do not like how easily Park gets hit with straight boxing combinations down the middle. He doesn't move his head very well. While he has good offensive boxing, his defense is not particularly good, and I didn't like that in that fight. And I know that even when there's been adversity in Park's career in these fights, he finds a way to get back into the fight and get it done, even if it's not going his way. But to me, this is just cut and dry, man. Like maybe at some point, maybe Park goes out there, pulls this one off if he's a huge underdog. Like I feel like people may lean that way, considering I do believe Taira's probably going to be a super heavy favorite. It's for good reason, man. He went to absolute war with one of the best flyweights that's been in the division for a while now in Brandon Royval. And it was a split decision, right? And what we've seen with Taira, his striking is improving, and this was 9 months ago. So I expect to see some improvements on the feet. Good straight, shots down the middle, good jab, decent right hand, decent calf kicks from range, and he utilizes good lateral movement on the outside to where he's not just going to be sitting in the phone booth to where Park can back him up against the fence, and that's where he likes to let his hands go. I don't see Taira just letting him do that. Right, and we know how good of a grappler Tatsuro Taira is. That's kind of how he's gotten to where he's at, man. He's got outstanding grappling. What he was able to do to Alex Perez and take his back, like people were just kind of discrediting, Perez got hurt. No, it's because of what Taira was doing. This guy's super flexible, super, super dangerous, man, when he's able to get your back. And, we saw him finish Carlos Hernandez. Got the decision win over a super tough guy in Edgar Chairez, and then goes out there and submits a guy like Jesus Aguilar who's got a nasty guillotine, right? Tatsuro Taira's got the experience here. And I know that Park's 29 and Taira's only 25, but man, coming off of a great back and forth over a 5-round fight with Brandon Royval to fighting Hyun Sung Park, who's very good, but gets hit with straight shots down the pipe, has shown that he can battle back from adversity. He's maybe the better striker, I guess. He could be. I don't like, this is just a huge step up in competition. It was a big step up against Steve Erceg, but yes, Steve's got wrestling, but he's a guy that's probably going to stand on the feet, and he doesn't have a super, I don't think he's as dangerous in terms of the submission game as Taira. I know Erceg's got a good ground game, and I know he can submit you and all those kinds of things, but at this point in their careers, I think Taira's better. I think Taira's better than a guy like Erceg. I think Erceg's maybe a better striker than Taira, but I expect to see some nice improvements in the game of Tatsuro Taira, and if you want me to be honest, I think he finds a submission at some point in this fight, man. I just think that the way that Park has battled some of the, in some of these moments getting hit with good, clean, straight shots, if Taira gets your back, it's not some other guy. He was taking Brandon Royval's back, and we know how good of a defensive grappler Royval is, unless when he's fighting a guy like Pantoja or a high-level guy like Taira, even though he did survive. I just don't see Park getting into those positions and being able to survive, the back takes of Tatsuro, man. I think Tatsuro Taira is one of the better prospects in the flyweight division. This is a big bounce-back opportunity for him. Don't forget that this kid was undefeated before losing to Brandon Royval, which was a massive step up for him. This is a massive step up for Park. I think that this is going to be a learning opportunity for Hyun Sung Park. And shout out to both guys for taking this fight and making this happen after Emil Albazi had to pull out. I think Tatsuro Taira is going to be too much for Hyun Sung Park. And I think in terms of the striking, he will be just fine. And when he could get to the back and get to the grappling, I think as good as Park is there, I think that there's a level difference here. I'm going Tatsuro Taira by submission. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. See you next time.